Hey there everybody, it's Mark Crowley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Today we're going to be drawing a winter chibi. That is to say a chibi girl that is wearing a winter coat and earmuffs and scarf and all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to draw the basic shape of the head and also just the eyes. Alright, so first of all, you can see I've left plenty of space underneath here. Make sure you've got plenty of space for drawing the body later on. But yeah, the top of the head very round, and then coming into sort of a 3/4 point of view over here, an angle at the chin. And notice that this eye is more of a wide oval, this one more of a narrow oval. That's a sort of a tradition of showing that the head is turning in space, turning away from the viewer just a little bit. And of course, the eyes themselves are quite low on the head, and that helps make the chibi look youthful. I would say probably even below the halfway line between the top of the head and the chin. So let's go ahead and we're going to add the eyebrows, just a little dot for the nose, and then the mouth. So with the eyebrows, I'd say leave quite a gap there because we're going to have, we need space for the upper eyelid and also a line for the fold of the upper eyelid, and that's why we need a little extra space in there. Notice that the nose is quite close to this eye, quite distant from that one. And then the mouth, you just sort of pay attention to the size of it from side to side. I'd say it's probably a little less wide than this eye here. Now I'm going to go ahead and jump into drawing the sort of winter coat that she's wearing, and I think what I'll do is I'll draw the coat itself and then just one of the arms, the one that's closest to us. Okay, so you can see I started with this arm, the one that's closer to us, fairly straight, maybe just at a little bit of an angle as it heads down from the shoulder. And then when you draw the shape of the coat, note that it's wider at the bottom than it is at the top, and that the height of it is probably just a little more than the height of the head, which is to say, an exaggeratedly oversized head, which is the chibi tradition, of course. And now I think it's time to add one arm over here that's going to be upraising, is that word? Raising up, holding a cup of cocoa, which will make it very wintry. And I think I won't draw that cup until later, but I'll go ahead and draw the hands on both of these arms right now. Okay, so as I said, this arm is bent at the elbow, kind of like a 90-degree angle right there. This shape here is pretty much a placeholder. Don't worry about it. It's going to get replaced by the mug of hot cocoa later on. And the same goes for this hand, although, you want to get the direction of it because it's going to be sort of pointing out that way. And we're pretty much done. We're just going to go ahead and draw the basic shapes of the legs, and then we can get on to some real-time drawing. So there you go. The leg that is closer to us is a little more bent at the knee, having these legs go in slightly different angles. I think that just makes for a more interesting pose. And the sort of size of this whole area of the legs is maybe roughly equal to that of the coat, just in terms of getting the proportions right. And now I think it's time to get into the details of the head and drawing the earmuffs and all that good stuff. So I'm going to refocus the camera and we'll get into some real-time drawing. All right, before I even get into the details of the eyes and so forth, I'm going to go ahead and get these earmuffs in place and make them nice and big, and they'll probably be kind of puffy later on, but I'll hold off on the details. Go ahead and get it. It looks like half of a hamburger bun or something, doesn't it? But you can kind of make the earmuffs any way you like, but what I'm planning to do is have the band of the earmuffs kind of follow along the top of that line that we did for the top of the head, and then sort of trail off over here because we can't really see that other side. But you can, of course, see the other earmuff, though not quite as much as you see this one, so I'm making it just a little smaller, sort of tilted away, just as we did with the eyes there. And I suppose we might as well go ahead and do the hair. While we're at it, I'm going to do one curving line right here. You can, of course, feel free to do any type of hairstyle you like. My thing with when I draw hair is I try to have it avoid going in front of the eyes or even going in front of the eyebrows. Because once you obscure the eyebrows, you start to kind of lose some of the emotion. You lose the facial expression. So I've got sort of like an M shape there, sort of looks like. And I'm going to go over and come over here and draw just an indication of the contour of the, whoops, hang on, I'm going to just refocus a little bit on the fly here so that you can see the lines I'm drawing. I think I actually didn't get to the entirety of one of the feet within frame of the video camera. Sorry, that happens periodically with me. And I'm going to do one big, long sort of shape of hair that comes across here. Again, just sort of my personal preference for this character's hairstyle. You should feel free to experiment and come up with a style that looks good to you. And I might just add just a little touch of hair back behind the earmuffs. All right, now it's time to get into drawing the rest of the details of the eyes. And we've got these big round oval shapes here, but I'm going to kind of, trim off a little bit of the top of that eye with the thick line of the upper eyelid. And by having that eyelid line interrupt the actual oval, that gives your character a very relaxed, calm look. If the upper eyelid extends or is way up above that and you see the entirety of the iris, they tend to look shocked or anxious or just hyped up, just makes them look super alert. So this shape over here is, you can see both of them have a little bit of an extra line on the other side of the eyes. That's one of my preferences, something that I picked up from Japanese artists as I studied Chibi drawings. And like I said before, we are going to get one line in here that's for the sort of fold of the upper eyelid, and very often it comes close to the middle, like to the bridge of the nose, if you imagined, there, rather than going all the way across. And in terms of the actual details of the eyes themselves, maybe I'll do one nice little highlight that's going to stay white later on. And I think I'll keep it really simple and just put one extra line here, and this will really have more to do with shading later on. I guess I'll give you a hint of that with the pencil right now, but I think we'll do that with color later on when we get to that stage. And that's about it for the details of the head, such as they are. Like I said, I think when I do my line work, this I'm going to turn into like puffy looking cute earmuffs. So if you want to, you could get a head start on that right now with your line work. I think it's time for me to refocus the camera so that we can get into drawing the scarf and the coat and probably that all-important mug of cocoa. So the first thing I'm going to do is get in some lines for the scarf going right around the neck. Probably going to divide it into, get a little bit of a square over here that suggests that the scarf is sort of tied together a little bit there. And then what I like to do is almost imagine a kind of a wind that is blowing the scarf off to the side, and then that allows you to make maybe two different sides, two different parts of the scarf, and have those, kind of like I did with her legs, have those two different parts of the scarf pointing in slightly different directions. I think this is just like a design thing. It makes it look more pleasing to the eye. And I've drawn an extra line here so that if you want, you can get those tassels, which to me helps sell the idea of this being a scarf. And, I'm just sort of tossing those in without thinking about them too much. And probably, if you want, later on, you can add a pattern of some kind. I'm going to go ahead and put some lines and maybe some X's like that. That, to me, always sort of is a quick way of suggesting that this is a patterned scarf of some kind. And that probably takes care of that, although I think we should continue that pattern idea over here, maybe. And now it's time to get into drawing the coat itself. I'm going to begin by having sort of the zipper area right down the middle. Of course, it's not the middle of my drawing because she's facing off to one side, but you can see me sort of altering it, having it zigzag a little to continue to suggest that shape of the contour. And before I do anything else, I'm going to add an area at the end of both sleeves that is going to be like a fur, it almost will look the same as her earmuffs. But as I said, we do want to drop in a mug of cocoa, and I'm actually going to sort of erase away in advance, because as I said, the mug of cocoa being held by her sort of blocks out the hand itself. Conveniently, those of you who don't like to draw hands, this mug of cocoa is saving you from having to do that. So I'm just drawing a rough shape, which you can sort of see the upper side of it. You can't really see the handle because that's on the other side. Another convenient thing you don't have to draw, but I would like to draw just a little alteration to the shape of the fingers here to suggest that they are coming around and gripping onto that handle. And how about a little wavy smoke symbol over here to help us imagine that that's a nice hot mug of cocoa. How do we know that it's cocoa? We don't, frankly. Maybe it could be coffee or matcha tea. I'll leave it to you. I'm going to add, again with the X's here, but this is sort of a different thing. To me, it's like the coat has this kind of pattern where it's sewn together in these areas, and that, to me, helps give some sort of feeling of texture almost to the coat itself. But before I get too close to the bottom, though, I want to do the same thing like I did with the cuffs here, and get a puffy, furry looking edge there, trim, I guess you would call it, at the edge of her coat. And I suppose we also want to get a little bit of that same texture of the coat, kind of like a pattern in there. Maybe get some lines for the wrinkle, the fold of the clothing there. And that pretty much takes care of that, except we haven't drawn the hand, have we? So I'm going to begin by drawing the thumb, like so. And I might erase away just a tiny bit here so as to make the pointer finger pointing out in this direction, and then the other fingers just to give a sort of a triangular area there. And that, to me, makes for a nice, elegant looking hand. Might be a little too long, though, actually. I think I'll go ahead and make the whole hand just a tiny bit shorter, because chibi hands are generally pretty small. I'm going to have to refocus the camera, but we really are getting near to the end of it. We're just going to do the legs and the boots, and then I can get into adding some color. So first thing I'm going to do is give her boots this same kind of furry trim. It's becoming like a theme, actually, of this drawing. And I feel like that should extend a little bit past the contours of the legs and the boots. And again, just do that sort of curvy shape there that suggests it's made of fur. Curvy shape, is that the right? Puffy? Maybe puffy is the right one. When I draw pants that are maybe like jeans or something like that, I like to draw a little bit of a seam over here on the one side, and maybe just a couple of lines for the wrinkling of the cloth. And down here across the boots, I don't think there's a whole lot that's needed. Maybe I'll draw 2 extra lines that sort of suggest the sole of the boot. And if you want to, you can add maybe a couple of little straps that go across and maybe tighten the boot, or they could be just decorative. Who knows? It's up to you. And that really takes care of all of the key line work. What I'm going to do now is start to add some color by way of markers. I think I'll do that all in time-lapse, but maybe when I come back later on to add in a little bit of colored pencil, I might do a little part of that real time. So let's go ahead and do some time-lapse here for adding color to this illustration. All right, so as promised, I thought I'd come back and add a little bit of colored pencil. You can see that all the colors that I chose using markers are these very cool, cold, wintry kind of colors. I thought that that would sort of help support this idea of the winter clothing, the winter character. But right now I'm adding just darker versions of the same color, and that's a trick that I use rather than using like black or gray to add shading. Very often I will just use a darker version of the blue. Let's say that the coat is a pale blue, so all the shading that I add to it I'm adding with a darker blue. And like we can go up to the hair and sort of do the same thing here, get a darker kind of aqua green kind of color in here. That tends to serve me well for adding shading, more so than if I just took a black pencil and started adding shading that way. But anyway, you're going to see me do all this in time-lapse, finish up the colored pencil, and after that I may go straight into the inking, which I'm saving for last. Sometimes I'll do the inking at this stage before adding colored pencil. It's not so important, I don't think, the order in which these things are done. But let's go ahead and take care of that, and I'll be back maybe to add a few little touches of my beloved white gouache before we wrap this video up. All right, well, we're pretty much done with this. I think I'll just add a touch more shading. This is the one area where I would just use black because I'm shading on top of gray. But one interesting thing that I always like to do with areas that are white, I will shade them with a pale blue. Or sometimes a pale purple. Those work very nicely for shading white areas. And that has, whether it's by hand or digitally, I will choose that, use that little trick. Just more visually appealing, and I think it actually relates to what we tend to see in real life, especially when characters are outdoors. In any case, it's time for me to pull out my ink pen. I'm going to ink this all up in time-lapse, and as I said, I may come back and add just a few little touches of my beloved white gouache to add white highlights. But we're very near the end now. Let's go ahead and finish up with the inking. Alright, so we finished up the inking. It's time to bring out the beloved white gouache and add just a few highlights. I think it's especially important in the area of the hair to have these little white highlights that help give a little shimmer or shine. And very often I find with these chibi illustrations that it's almost just like a straight line right across the top of the head there. You don't have to get too much more fancy than that. I will probably go through with the white gouache and add a few highlights here and there. Like here, I think on these individual little squares of the coat, I think that could help with things, and maybe even just on top of the areas that are already white. Maybe you can make them whiter still with this beloved white gouache. And then I am going to come back and thank you all for supporting me and getting my books and all that good stuff. I think we do have to add some blushies, though, so don't go away. We're going to be back with a couple of more things. All right, well, that takes care of the gouache, but of course this drawing is not done until I add the blushies. Can you imagine if I wrapped up this video without adding blushies? The uproar, the torches and pitchforks, the mob that would come after me? I don't even like to think about it. But that takes care of the drawing itself. Give me a moment. I'm going to go ahead and grab my books so that I can thank everyone who has supported me by getting them, like Mastering Manga 1, 2, and 3. These books have a lot of Chibi information in them, but not as much as Chibi, the official Mark Curly How to Draw Guide, which is, of course, exclusively about drawing in the Chibi style, and one of my newest books, The Comic Book Lesson, a graphic novel that teaches you how to make comics. I really am super, super grateful to anyone who supports me by getting any of those books. But let's go ahead and lay down this blushy pencil. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back with another one real soon.